Totally.
Welcome, everyone, to Alliance for a Viable Future podcast. I'm your host, Lev Natan. Today, I'm very excited to be talking to my colleague, my comrade, an inspirational human being in my life. But really, he's just my bro. He's my brother. I call him my
Sure.
brother in true, real life. That's how I adopted brother. Truly, that's how we kind of say that to each other. Hey, bro, this and that. But I actually, it's been years that I know this beautiful brother in my life, Jon Lee Rucker, and I have one older brother, that I grew up with, in life, and then I'm grateful to have brothers now in my life that really feel like real brothers, and we're both fathers, and we both have the importance of prayer in our life, and in a similar way, the spiritual community that we have. So like that, it's really been a joy to get to know you, Jon, over the last I don't know, 8 to 10 years. It feels like something like that, a number of years, and then just to know that you're going to be, in my life, by my side, as a friend, as a brother, for many, many years to come. So I just wanted to start that conversation in that way. And then we were just having a little bit of talking of it, setting our intention for this conversation here, where it's recorded. Thank you so much to each of you who is listening. And I want to say thank you, Jon, for being such a support for me, at times when I was building my work up, and, that you participated in my work, and have had good words for me in support all along, ever since you learned about it. Really, when we first started talking, you're like, oh yeah, this is what I'm working on. Then you were saying, this is what I'm working on. And we've been there for each other, like brothers in a beautiful way. And so I'm really grateful to be having this conversation with you right now, and hear how you put together your thoughts, words, and actions, because you're one of the people that I see out in my life who have really put those things in order, in alignment, that you have these thoughts that come from deep inside, and then your words express your thoughts really in a beautiful way. And then I see you doing the things that you say. And that's called integrity, as far as I understand it, being authentic, being in integrity with yourself. It's a quality that is very powerful in this day and age in particular, because I don't see it. It's so much, it's rare, and I want to see it more. So my feeling is, people listening to you, then they're going to feel it, and then it's going to help them too, to feel inspired that they can do that also. It's like, we need to lead by example the best way we know how in this moment in time. And I see you doing that, and I'm doing my best. And we all make mistakes, but we're doing our best to do that. And so welcome to this Alliance podcast.
Hey, bro, thank you very much. Yeah, brother, I appreciate the warm introduction, and to everybody else who's listening, relatives, right? Got to know how to relate to you in some way. So I'll just call you relatives for now. But my brother here, we've been together for all these years, like you said. I was thinking about that today. So we were about to have this conversation, and I appreciated what you said about integrity too. The thought that came to my mind was that, I didn't always have that integrity with myself, and I think that our human society, our human, modern way of life is very much out of integrity with who we truly are as human beings. And so maybe we'll talk a little bit about that at some point too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's good to
So
be here with you.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I just want to introduce a little bit of how I know you in terms of the work that you do. First met you and you were working on PermaJam, or even before you were just thinking about it and talking about it and saying, hey, I need help to do this. And then you went ahead and did it 4 times, and you kept doing it, and you built a huge community here in the Northeast. And then, that community's still here. And, the pandemic was really, made you have to shift gears in some way. Like so many of us, all of us have been touched and had to shift gears. And then you got your hat there, Wild Beauty Farm. For those who are listening, Jon's wearing his hat, Wild Beauty Farm. That's the farm that you have founded now. And so you're integrating all of the principles and desires and values and vision, everything that's important to you. It's you're pouring it into this beautiful land that you have near the Ashokan Reservoir in the Hudson Valley. So just wanted to share with everyone a little kind of bio of what Jon has been up to, PermaJam, and then farming. And I'd love for you to maybe share a little bit of your story and what we were talking about before, just to jump right in with that focus on taking things seriously. Actually, that really struck a chord with me. You were talking about that with what's going on in the world, that in some ways, for you, I know for myself, having a son and you having a daughter, it made me take it seriously even more, what's going on around us, so that I can really make things right for him. So I'm just curious if you could share about your story in kind of that context of like this journey of increasingly greater focus on the need to take things seriously in regards to what's happening on our planet.
Well, bro, my journey on this road, it really began like around 2008, 2009, somewhere around there. And it really started with some information that came into my awareness. It was a film about a subject that I know both of us are passionate about, which is water. The film was called Flow, FLOW. It's a acronym for love of water. And the film was about water privatization, right? And how the commodification and the privatization of our water supply, our global water supply, was leading to a really, a situation that was going to be affecting every single human being somewhere down the road, And so it kind of hit me in that moment, like humanity's on this trajectory, and somewhere down this trajectory, we're going to be facing major consequences of these corporations and their actions, So it inspired me in such a way where I felt like I need to do something. We're talking about my family's water supply. They drink that water. My future generations, all the future generations, somewhere down the road, those folks are in trouble if we keep down this trajectory. And it hit me in that moment, like I have a responsibility to do something, And so it ignited that in me. And I sort of went down, a variety of other rabbit holes at that time, and started to understand that the water supply wasn't the only, crack in the foundation of this thing we call society. There were a lot of other things that were on a similar trajectory. And so I became, I would guess you would call it activist. You know, I became active in starting to reach out to people in my community, organize events where I could talk to people and give presentations on, you know, those sort of materials that I was coming across. And then, you know, something shifted again when I came across another piece of information. And this was a guy named Max Egan. And he's still giving podcasts today, Max Egan from Australia. And something that he said was that, you know, you can't really change the whole world yourself. You know, you can only really change yourself, learn to become self-sufficient and not dependent on the system for all of your needs. And that in that way, that's like the, you know, the place where every single human being can start, can begin, you know, on becoming liberated and on making a difference in this world. And that resonated with me as true, what he said. And I immediately started looking for farms where I could learn how to grow my own food. And shortly after that, I found a place, Cropsey Community Farm. It was a farm that was just starting out on 5 acres of land in Rockland County, New York, a town called New City. And they were looking for an apprentice farmer to work on their CSA, be growing food for about 200 families. So, so that was exactly what I was looking for. And I joined on up in there and I became an apprentice working for this farm. And it was, you know, it was a challenging year because it was just a farm that was just getting started with large ambitions of trying to go grow food for 200 families. And then shortly into that first season of working with them, the farmer that I was apprenticing for got fired. So all of a sudden the apprentices became the farmers. Very early on into that season, we were put in that position where we don't really know very much about growing food, but we're now the farmers growing food for 200 families. And believe me, there were some challenging times in that season where I wanted to quit, but we stuck with it and we grew food for those 200 families. And I gained a tremendous experience of learning to grow food for a lot of food, you know, and work with the earth in that way. And I also learned sort of more conventional ways of growing food through that, and kind of went on from there. After that first year there, they really wanted me to stay, keep working on that farm, but I sort of got what I had came for, you know, that education. And so the next year, me and 5 other young activists, good friends of mine, some of them who I do call brother, we went on to start a community called the Eastern Light Project. You might remember that, Lev. That was right around the time that I, you know, came acquainted with you. Mm-hmm. So the Eastern Light Project, we had an amazing opportunity, the 6 of us, to rent 25 acres of land with a beautiful house on it. And so we moved in there and we started what I guess you would call like a education center for sustainability. And we were demonstrating suburban style permaculture on that 25 acres there. And it was really something, you know. I would say we had about, you know, a couple hundred people at times coming and visiting us and taking workshops there. And, you know, we were just learning at that time. You know, we were learning through doing, through creating. We were learning permaculture by just, you know, studying and applying those techniques, and people were coming to learn from us. But meanwhile, we were just learning too, you know, so we were just, you know, hey, come here and we'll learn together. And that was a really wonderful experience. My first experience in really being a community builder, you know, building a community. You know, that land, it was for sale and we tried to raise the money to save it, but it wound up getting sold off. So about 2 years into that project, we had to move off onto something else. At that time, I was just kind of feeling a little bit, you know, heartbroken about having to leave that project. We had invested a lot of energy into it, and it was really something magnificent, you know. But shortly after that, trying to figure out what to do next, and I got that light bulb went off for what's called PermaJam now. Perma being permaculture and jam being, jam festival music, right? And so we're combining these sort of aspects of, event organizing and festivals and stuff like that with, this whole idea of returning back to the earth and gathering people around this principle that, we should leave the land better than we found it, right? So what does that mean when we gather together? What is that potential of how much better can we leave this land than when we found it? So for example, in our last, festival that we did at a place called Blossomdale Sanctuary, we built a garden there, and that garden is still there providing food for the community that is frequenting that place now. So, and it's a beautiful garden. It's a geometric mandala, 4 directions, so that was just, one example of how we can get together as a community and leave the land better than we found it. And the idea was that by creating a permaculture there, we built a permaculture that's a permanent culture that's going to be there even after we're gone. Future generations are going to be benefiting off of the effort that we put in, and that 4 days that we were gathered there together where we built that garden, it's going to have an impact all the way into the future generations. And so my hope, my prayer, my wish, and my intention with creating PermaJam was that it was going to inspire more human beings to gather in this way. If we're going to put all this energy into getting together and Burning Man and, thousands of dollars to get all a bunch of costumes and a whole bunch of stuff like that, well, let's have a beautiful impact on that land that's going to host our fun festivals, And so that's really what it was all about. And it was all about the future generations. And I really wanted to, keep that 7 generations mentality in the forefront of our gatherings, remind people again that we have opportunity today to do something good for the people, the children of the future, which I feel like was, sort of, a keystone foundation of what the Native American spiritual way of life was, that awareness that what they were doing here on this earth today was going to impact their future generations. And so I wanted to bring that back into our forefront of our awareness as, modern people, that intentionality and that consciousness, So that was always at the heart of PermaJam. And like you said, bro, with the pandemic happened, it really kind of threw a wrench in the momentum that we were building as a community. Plus, simultaneously for me, we just had our daughter, Yana, had just been born September 9th, 2019. And so she's 2.5 now. And right at that time, we were looking for a home, and we found this beautiful land that we live on now, 7.5 acres. So having a family and having a new home, it kind of, as my own individual capabilities weren't really able to continue to build community in the same way and keep that momentum going and fight against the current of just, what was happening at the time in the globe, so yeah, it just was kind of the natural thing to do, was to shift all of my energy onto this homestead in this place where I am now, and that's been a real wonderful journey, which has taught me a lot over these last 2 years of being here at this place as well.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story with me and everyone who's listening. And there's a few themes that you were speaking about that are, themes that I try to notice, that I hear. I don't try to, I do naturally notice when I'm talking to people in this podcast, because that's the kind of people that I like to listen to and talk with here. You said, that first experience as an apprentice, it was really hard, but that, you wanted to quit at certain times, but then you just decided to stick with it. Something there is really important. There's a book was written by this Harvard smart, really amazing woman. I can't remember her name, but it was called Grit.
Mm-hmm.
The book is called Grit. I think I have it on my shelf back there. And I read through the whole thing and underlined a lot of things. And she's basically just talking about that. Like it's hard to do anything that's worthwhile doing. But
Mm-hmm.
then when you have that grit, then you stick with it. And
Mm-hmm.
then you get through it and you make
Mm-hmm.
something more beautiful and you have more skills, and then you have more confidence and you can create bigger things, take on more responsibility. So just wanted to mention that. And then at the same time about leadership is that you were just learning that at the Eastern Light Project,
Mm-hmm.
right? That you were just learning, but then people came and were learning from you. Is, you
Yeah.
know, there's a myth. I think I'm using myth in the way of, you know, there's uh you know, things that aren't that people see, but they aren't really, it's really not that way, you know. In
Mm-hmm.
that case, you know, the whole idea of leadership is like, oh, they've got their stuff together, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they got their shit together. Actually, we can, if it's important to say it in that way, in that moment, right? um and what I'm learning about leadership is it's really about learning, being open to learning, you know, saying I'm open to learning and being in the learning process, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and bringing, inviting others into that learning process. For me, Indigenous Peoples
Mm-hmm.
Day, putting that event on and doing it
Mm-hmm.
again, and I'm just learning. I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how to do it. And I've heard, you know, the founder of the Chronogram magazine, based in Hudson Valley, uh, forgetting his name right now, he said the same thing. You know, in a book that he wrote, an essay, he said, they asked him, how did you start? How did you know how to start a magazine? By starting a magazine. You know, so that's it. Yeah, I just learned. You know, you learn how you do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it really struck me. You say, leave this land better than we found it. You know, that's, so it's like there's some different pieces here. I think that's the piece that I kind of want, we can, I just wanted to mention those and you can respond to it too. But that's the part where I don't always, that's the part that we need more of, you know, is
Mm-hmm.
that there's a certain kind of awareness and respect that's
Mm-hmm.
and devotion to something, that
Mm-hmm.
leave it in, is a simplicity, you know, in our modern society, whatever word you want to use. Some people don't like the word modern, but we know what we're talking about. Here we are in this present day, to have that inclination to leave the land and the earth and the nature and then the community also better than we found it, you know, than that 7 generations teachings, those teachings that were passed down, and that, you know, we're very fortunate that we can, in a humble way, we can be inspired by them too. So just wanted
Right.
to speak about those things, and then, you know,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you want to just respond and then start to explore, you know, some of these ideas about self-sufficiency and you know, why it's so important in the kind of global context of this day, you
Mm-hmm.
know, February 23rd, 2022, you know, here we are in this now, like go back to the earth now, is what
Mm-hmm.
you told me. So
Mm-hmm.
wanted to share some of those thoughts and whatever's emerging for you.
Well, I'm definitely reminded of, what it was like for me, starting out on that path. And, like I was talking about the Eastern Light Project when, we were just sharing with people what we were learning. And I remember there were naysayers back then, and even throughout my whole journey with PermaJam, there were naysayers saying, oh, look at these guys, they don't know permaculture, or like, oh man, this guy, he doesn't know how to organize events, and they were right, you know. It's true. But we sure learn fast. And actually, um, those mistakes and those, little, messes up along the way on that journey, they were really, really good teachers for me. And I learned a lot really fast, you know, just in a couple of years, making little mistakes and little successes, little failures and stuff like that sure taught me a lot along the way, and it's definitely helped me to gain that grit that you're talking about, just trusting in the process and not learning to not beat myself up when I do have those little, things that don't work out the way that you want them to, right? But just receiving it as a lesson and a teaching in a good way, and it gives you that grit, because you're going to come out of that on the other side stronger, wiser, and more efficient as well. So there's always going to be naysayers, but I just like want to encourage that for people and their own inner naysayers that they have, because I've heard it before, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know the first thing about gardening. I don't know the first thing about growing food, this and that, and it's like, how you going to learn, get that seed, get that dirt, stick it in there, put some water on it, see what happens. Maybe the plant will bloom and give you a lot of good food, or maybe it'll die and you won't get much, but you'll learn something. You know what I mean? So just, I really want to encourage people like that as we're going to have our conversation. And I'm going to, that's really going to be at the heart of our conversation, is to just encourage people to get back to the earth, so we could start out with that too. Little word of encouragement,
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, I imagine, and then I also have experienced myself, taking those hands-on actions, using my hands, to plant food, or, you know, work in the woods on my land, or build something, even if that's not my quote profession, to be a builder or a farmer, but then to become a whole person by using all of the intelligence that I have access to in my body, that body embodied intelligence, the emotional, mental, spiritual intelligence, my gut, my everything, practicing different ways, then it stretches what I'm capable of. So I know just that vulnerability of putting a seed in the ground. I don't know if it's going to work, and then, okay, yeah, like you said, maybe it won't work, but then I'm going to ask, maybe I'll call you up, say, hey, the seed didn't grow. What do I do? How do I grow the next one? And that's the thing about nature too, is there's so many seeds, I could buy a whole package of seeds and I plant 100 of them and maybe 10 of them grow, but that's great. Let's grow those 10 and give them a space. So, yeah, I'm curious, your experience, over these, almost 15 years now, but, learning those skills of growing food, self-sufficiency. And then now it's like, you're the lead head farmer, and your people are signing up for your CSA, and then they come and they want to learn, maybe you're doing some workshops, those sort of things, so they can get involved as much as they want. What's your, some of the practical things you've been learning, and then also, through that practical engagement, like what does that give to you in your spirit, and your sense of confidence and leadership?
Well, I was thinking about how, it started off as a journey to learn how to grow my own food, but it's really kind of evolved into learning how to do almost everything that I need on my own, as much as I can. Right now we're tapping the maple trees. Just got our first half gallon of maple syrup the other day, so that's a new thing that I learned. But I think that some of the things that have been vital, in addition to learning how to farm and garden, is foraging for wild, edible and medicinal foods, plants, useful plants here in the Northeast, you know, and, learn how to sweep my own chimney, everything that goes along with having a house and a home, right? I really kind of think of it as just homesteading. There's another word for it, right? And so I think that, what I'm kind of doing here on our land is sort of everything that people who have been homesteading in this region have been doing for countless numbers of years, and probably anyone who's homesteading all around the world can relate to a lot of the work that we're doing here. It's a little unique to our own bioregion, as far as some of the things that we have to deal with here and some of the things that grow here and thrive here. But I think anybody who's, homesteaded, and I feel like we all pretty much come from that, at some point, however many generations ago, came from farmers and homesteaders and back to indigenous people who, lived sort of like how we're living here today, except we do have a lot of the, more modern additions to that way of life, and I utilize those things as well. A lot of the new technologies, tools, things like that, are very useful to me. And so, whatever helps to make life better here, and at the same time always being mindful of that imprint that we're having here. But I'm not opposed to a lot of the modern conveniences that just make life easier.
Well, what's an example of that? Because that can get like
sure.
It can be like a walking the razor's edge, they say.
Yeah.
It's like, when does convenience become unhealthy almost?
Right.
We're not almost. We could go down that road, but we don't need to go all the way down. It's like, what's an example of like being mindful about, okay, I'm gonna use this.
Yeah. Well, I think that there is an answer to that question. When does it become unhealthy? And I think that it becomes unhealthy when you're not going to survive, without it. For example, I'm tapping these maple trees right now, so I'm getting sustenance from these trees, nourishment. It's going to nourish me and my family for the next year with the maple syrup and all the minerals in there. But we're using this like PVC tube that we connect to the tree in order to get that water into there, right? So it's a very convenient technology, this PVC, right? It's not the most environmentally friendly, that's for sure. You know what I mean? But, I'm not personally ready to make that full transition in my life to where everything that I need is coming directly from the land itself, and nothing from the pollutive industries of the world, this human society. I don't think that would be really feasible for me right now. You know what I mean? So, but the important thing is that I'm making the transition. Myself, I'm having a smaller footprint, day by day, year by year on this earth. More and more of the things that I need, I'm producing here on our land, like the compost, and not having it trucked in from somewhere else and using that gasoline, So yeah, it's that transition, and I feel like it's true, like principally, that we're kind of walking a knife's edge there. And it's going to be unique for each person as far as, it's good to have that question on the forefront of like, is what I'm doing right now having a negative impact on the earth? And is it me? Am I staying true to my own values? And just kind of having to do the best you can with what you have.
Yeah. I would like to get into some of your concerns quite just to be blunt in some ways about it,
Sure.
in terms of the plight of our collective predicament that we're in, and how you have, what we started with was about taking it seriously, that you saw the writing on the wall. At some, you saw that documentary, that was what it was for you. I'm sure pretty much, maybe this podcast might be that thing for someone who's listening. Who knows? But my sense is probably most people who are listening to this have had at least one, if not many, 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 many experiences of seeing the writing on the wall, so to speak, about what's going on, and saying, what's my response? There's 10,001 possible responses to seeing the writing on the wall. And I think the important thing to do is to engage one of those, or many of them, as many as make sense for each individual, but focusing on the ones that really call to each individual. And there are some fundamental things that, like you said, individually, but then collectively, seem like we need to figure out a different way forward, like with fundamentals of living on this planet, with this planet: water, food, energy, substance, the substance, materials, building materials, right, so on and so forth. And all those comes from a worldview or a consciousness. So it's a lot of things, right? And that consciousness is connected to education and media and so on and so forth, and policies. So there's a little rant there. I know we've been going back and forth about it. So I just would love to hear, you've clearly made a response, and this is, you're living it. And then what is your, so how does that make you feel for yourself, that you made that choice, and you see what's going on around, and you say, well, it's concerning, and we're doing well here. I know I'm taking care of business at home, and I have concerns about maybe my neighbors or my relatives, my friends, and then the greater community of humanity.
Well, when it all started back then, when I saw that film For Love of Water, it was just a growing awareness, and that awareness has grown, since then. At that time, I was seeing that there was this catastrophe on the horizon for humanity. Maybe it would be in my lifetime, maybe not, and then, a couple years went by, and we start to collectively learn a lot about the environmental crisis. This has come to the forefront for us. We see that ecosystems are collapsing, climate change, all that stuff, right? And but still, it was like, it's something that maybe it's going to happen in my lifetime, maybe not, and we get to this current period of time, and I'll just have to say that my own observations, I would say that the collapse of society, at least here in the Western society, is probably going to happen within our lifetime, even in just the next year or two, in a lot of ways, and that's definitely nothing to laugh about. But back then, when I had that insight, it inspired me to say, I have to act now. You know what I mean? And from then, 10 years have passed by, and it's still that same feeling. And it doesn't matter when the collapse will be, or if it even will be at all. The skills and the tools that I've gained and the values that I've adopted over these years have become vital to my own happiness and my own, integrity, like you said, right? So I feel like it's all, very pertinent, no matter what you believe about, how and when or if, these things are going to happen, right? But I will just say that, some things to be aware of right now is the food supply chain. The input for farmers this year in the United States and in a lot of the globe, actually, the farm inputs, the costs of running a farm have gone up about 30% for the farmers, and on top of that, there's a shortage of pesticides and fertilizers, and these are a lot of what the commercial agriculture industry relies on to grow food for large percentage of the population of the world. So, we're looking at a situation where a lot of the farmers aren't going to have the supplies that they need to grow the food that they need, and their costs have gone up, which is going to translate to the consumer, right? The consumer is going to wind up paying more in that regard. And then, on top of that, there's been a lot happening with the weather over the last year. We had the derecho, which knocked out a couple million acres of farmland in the middle United States, so that it affected our grain reserves. I don't know if people know that we have grain reserves, storage reserves for the people of the United States, and we've been tapping into those reserves pretty hard. So you add that to everything that's going on, and you can even think about the truckers up in Canada, and, further disruptions to the supply chains. And right now in Portugal, there's like thousands of shipping containers just sitting there off of the coast of Portugal. For what reason, I don't know, why they're not working and doing their job delivering food where it needs to go. And while all this is happening, you have some of the major powers of the world, like China, buying up mass quantities of the grain supply, making sure that their people have food. And so that's going to affect all the trade, internationally, and the prices of all these grains and things like that. But on top of that, just like the basic materials, like metals and wood and all that stuff, like, energy, fuel, all those things are going up in price, have gone up in price, and are continuing to go up in price. So I think we're looking at some potential serious inflation this year. Two of the channels that I listen to, there's a guy named Ice Age Farmer, and then there's another channel called Adapt 2030, and these guys have been really following the global food supply chain issue, and their predictions are that by the summertime we'll be experiencing shortages of food and major inflation, and so in no way do I want to put anybody into a panic about that at all. But it's like, for years we've been saying, like, now's the time to get back to the earth. Well, that statement has never been more true than right now. Now's the time. So whatever you can do to prepare yourselves, I definitely recommend people making sure that they're prepared. It's interesting, talking about this stuff. I've talked with a lot of people about this, and some people like just kind of look at you like you're crazy for like thinking you need to prepare and stock up on food and learn how to grow your own food and stuff like that. But I think it's really strange. Like, we might be the first generation that's not just like a totally normal thing to do. Since when was it not normal for human beings to be prepared for any type of disaster? You know what I mean? Like, our previous generations, like, they were ready for this kind of stuff. They knew how to grow their own food. They knew how to build stuff too. And so I don't know if it's like arrogance or something like that with this generation, that we've like thought that it's kind of crazy to think that way, but they say, there's a saying, it says chance favors the prepared mind. And so you were asking me how I feel personally. I feel a lot lighter than I probably would, knowing the information that I just shared with you and having not been prepared for it in any way. But I will tell people it's not too late to prepare, for that. And I can mention some of the things that I feel like are, essentials for pulling us through potential hard times. I could mention that at some point. But
Yeah, it's a good time to say a few things.
well, think about this. Microgreens, right? I got this one place called True Leaf Market, I call them, and they have bulk seeds. Broccoli, alfalfa, cabbage, all kinds of seeds that you can sprout and make microgreens. So this is something that you can grow any time of year. You can have, if you have a little indoor grow light or a nice warm sunny room in the wintertime, you can even grow microgreens, and they're just bursting with nutrition. And from like a week to 10 days where you planted those seeds, you can have loads and loads of sprouts. So that's like and then you can store those seeds for a number of years too. So it's like a very resilient form of food and nutrition that you can have. But me, I'm stocked up on all kinds of seeds. Personally, I have like quite a seed catalog at this point. So I'm prepared to, grow my microgreens. I'm prepared to grow all my crops throughout the spring, summer, and fall. Obviously, water's like essential, right? You need to maybe stock up on some water and know where you can get some water in case these utilities shut down at any point. You never know, right? I say, it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So I'm saying that to all those folks out there who, think that it's crazy to want to be prepared. It's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And if there's going to be inflation, right, going out to the store and stocking up on a whole bunch of food, even if there isn't a shortage of food, you're still going to eat that food, and it's going to cost less if you buy it, a whole bunch of it now, than if you just buy little bits of it over the next couple of year or two. So it's just a wise thing to do, to just take some of that money and invest it in food, and you're going to eat it no matter what. And if you can allocate some of that money towards getting yourself some soil and some seeds, some compost, stuff like that. I mean, those are just the basic things you need to grow food. In the Northeast, I mean, I think it's pretty essential, if you're serious about growing your own food, to build yourself a little greenhouse. And that way you can ensure that you can grow food all year round, and have that food for yourselves. Chickens, I mean, for a couple of bucks, you can get yourself, some fertilized eggs. You can hatch them yourself, or you can, for 10, 15 bucks, buy yourself some nice laying hens. And each hen is going to pretty much lay for you about an egg a day. So you and your family, how many eggs do you need every single day? That's an amazing source of food right there. Just so happens that the price of animal feed is going up a lot. Every time I go in the store, it costs more money for animal feed. So I'm this year going to be investing a lot of my own energy into creating my own animal feeds, growing crops like amaranth and sorghum, grains that my chickens can eat. Maybe looking into black soldier flies, or cultivating maggots, which is really good food for chickens. Sounds pretty gross, and it is, but stuff like that. And then there's the other things you might have to think about in the Northeast, like heat. Maybe you want to invest in a wood stove, start chopping some firewood so it's nice and dry for you, that sort of thing. Oils, I myself, have enough knowledge about foraging in the Northeast where I could pretty much live off of the land if I needed to entirely, but things like oils, those are things where, I don't know how to produce those things myself, and they're very valuable for my health and nutrition. So those are some things that I'd be stocking up on: cooking oils, yeah, seeds, nuts, flour, vinegar, those are the essentials, I think, when it comes to nutrition that you wouldn't be able to forage for yourself necessarily out there. So yeah, I mean, that's another great thing too, folks. I mean, if you're in the Northeast or wherever you are, you can learn how to forage, and it's something that you can learn pretty quickly. The plants that are growing in abundance around you, start there. The ones that there's just tons of it everywhere. Learn about it. I mean, there's tons of dandelions around me, and they're just loaded with nutrition. You can even make coffee from the roots of a dandelion plant. You just chop up that root, bake it on a low temperature in your oven, and you got yourself a nice coffee. And it's delicious and it's nutritious too. So, plants like dandelion, those are plants that are very, very common around me. And so it might be a good thing to learn, what are the plants that are food or medicine that grow in abundance all around you, and then after that, you learn those ones. Yeah, you can learn more of the things that are maybe less common, but they're there. You have them around you. You might want to learn about them. There's apps nowadays on your phone. You can take your phone and take a picture of a plant outside, and it will tell you what that plant is and what you can use it for. So that's just amazing where we are with technology today. So yeah, I mean, those are the major things. I think that's the major thing that we're having to deal with right now. Everybody's kind of becoming aware of it now, is that there is inflation, and where is that all leading? I think it's leading to a situation where a lot of us, we're going to have to scale back. We're going to have to scale back as far as what we're able to spend money on. That's usually how it starts, right? It's like, well, people stop going out to restaurants every night, and start cooking at home again a little bit, So it's like that, I think my own prediction is that human beings are pretty quickly going to start scaling back on those things. And in that, we're going to be learning how to get back to those basics again, how to can and preserve, another essential thing to have, canning jars, right? And then it might even get to another point in time where, those resources have really dried up. And then we're, relying on ourselves even more, so becoming self-reliant. And I do feel really good about having made those choices in my life. I think that, in hindsight, looking back on it all, I'm like, wow, everything has kind of led me here to this point where, I'm doing all these things that I really love and enjoy. And it turns out that I'm not really going to need them too.
Yeah, that's all really practical information. I was taking notes for my own family. I made a decision in my last podcast to get a little bit personal, and I'm gonna do that again, because I'm learning. It's good. Just yesterday, convergence of things. We have this piece of land, about, and we're planning to build our home up there, and it's taken longer than we thought. And just yesterday, we're here in Housatonic outside of Great Barrington right now, renting, and we had a neighbor come around and with a petition. It comes back right into this beautiful conversation. See, that's what I'm learning, how beautiful the synchronicities are. You had a wake-up call about water 14 years ago, 2008. That's been my wife. She inspired me to work on water issues here in our Berkshire County, have rights for the Housatonic River, to clean up that water there. So we're thinking about that, going step by step. But we've heard here in Housatonic, the water quality has been poor, even when we moved here. So we don't drink it. But as far as then, we put filters on the showers and the bath too. But it's just, there's issues there. This old woman, she's been here for her whole life. She was signing a petition saying that the people are getting cancer from the water here. It's getting worse and worse, and it's private. If it's privately owned, how can that be? Privately owned here in Housatonic. So, we've been going back and forth personally in our family. Oh, what should we do? We wanted to move up to the land. We had plans to move up sooner with the house and this and that. But we just yesterday, just from that one thing about the water, being able to put a well in the earth and have clean water, that's thank God that we may have that opportunity. Some people don't have the opportunity, then they have to become activists, which we've had to do as well in certain situations, and say, hey, we demand a different reality here for a community's water supply. But fortunately, for us, we had this opportunity to move over there, and that was just yesterday. We said, yeah, we're going to move as soon as possible. We're going to, probably live in some yurts up there and start to build our retreat center and do that as soon as possible. All these things you're talking about, then I got a voice memo from you, right after we had made that decision, where we felt it in our bodies. I got a voicemail from you talking about all these things. And it was just encouraging me. You know what? It's now. You said that to me yesterday. Get back to the earth now. So
Yeah.
it's like there's these levels of action, and I got a family, I got a son, and yeah, I got to make it work, make it move forward. It takes courage to make these changes, this transition you're talking about. So just saying that's my own experience of responding to what you're saying to me.
Yeah.
Lee Rucker, my brother, and it's having an impact on me in this moment that you're sharing it. Because, we talk a lot, but when you have a conversation like this on a podcast, it has a different level of the way we articulate ourselves. So the way that you're articulating yourself is having an impact on me. And so I hope that is the same for others. I have a co-op that I belong to in Great Barrington. I've been putting it on. I've done it before. Buy in bulk, buy 25 pounds of oats, buy 10, 20 pounds of rice. I did that before, and I'm going to get off this call with you, and I'm going to do it again. There's a buying club. If you're not part of a co-op, look around in your neighborhood. You have a food co-op. You can do bulk buying of those grains. So that's an important thing. That's what we're going to do. Grains, all these things, oils, seeds, vinegar, water, 5-gallon jugs, so on and so forth. And it does, it's like in my own body to feel nervous. I feel nervous when I hear you talking about it.
Right.
We all experienced it at the beginning of the pandemic. The shelves were bare. They were more bare. Even in this beautiful co-op that I get to go to, it was like, whoa, I was feeling it. And then, there was a rebound, but it's, this is a system that we live with. So, like what you said, it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. I think it says it right there. And in that right there, this alchemical process that's very subtle, very small, inside of our emotional bodies. I'm speaking for myself. I'm nervous, and then I do something proactive. I sprout some seeds, and in that moment, I make bone broth. In that moment, that nervousness, it gets like some oxygen or something to light that fire of inspiration and empowerment. And then I want to keep feeding that and keep moving with that energy. So, that's that ceremonial aspect of life that I've learned with you and by my side, as in our community, that we don't know. We just don't know where it's going. But like you said, it's better to be prepared, and it's better to keep moving in that positive direction, right? Okay, I'm going to do one thing that's positive today, and then I'm going to do another thing, and I'm going to keep building on it little by little. Those atomic habits, those little habits, Atomic Habits is also the name of a really good book. But to do those little things, they add up into something really good. And I can tell, I'm putting things together as I'm listening to you, like, you have a certain confidence about you. And I think a lot of it has to do with all these things, that you know how to do, that are life supporting for you and your family. It's just fundamentally a good thing to be able to know those things. It's a very powerful statement to make, and not too many people. I can't make that statement personally, to say that I could go live on the land, just straight up off the land if I needed to. you know, for you to just say that and to be honest about it is really something. So, you know, but then again, it's that transitional process, just little by little. How are you going to learn? I'm just repeating and highlighting the important things that I'm learning, and that is helpful for me in listening to you. You know, with gardening, you know, how are you going to learn? You know, little by little, keep it going. And then, of course, there's that collective work of systems change that's also, you know, what I feel most committed to. So that's where I've been also setting up myself. So so it's all connected. It's all connected. We all do our part, you know, do the best we can. So thank you so much, Jon. And I want you to just have a moment, if you want to share some last words, to kind of tie up the bundle, this conversation.
Sure. Well, I want to relate to that nervousness that you were talking about. You know, that nervousness that I think that everybody feels when kind of faced with sort of the, you know, more, you know, difficult parts of reality that we have to face. And that courage, you know, that you were talking about, that you can respond to that nervousness with courage by facing it and by turning that nervousness into action, you know, into positive action in your life. But I think it's really like that nervousness that for many years has stopped humanity from really acting on the things that were growing in our awareness, right? The environmental crises and things like that. You know, I think that is a lot easier to just sort of like say, you know what, I'm not going to look at that right now. That's not going to affect me, you know, somewhere. I'll just ignore it and just keep living my life, and nothing needs to change for me in my life, you know. And it's, I think for me, you know, I've even felt some of that nervousness over the last couple of years, but I feel it much less now at this period of time. And you know, is better to face that the harsh realities sooner than later. You know, it's better to face it when it's just a little gentle tap. You know, for me back in 2008, it was just a gentle tap on my mind. It was like, hey, you know, maybe in your lifetime, maybe not, you know. But it still inspired me into that action, you know. But now we're coming to a point for humanity where it's just gonna smack you in the face if you haven't already answered the call. You know, at some point we're gonna have to face that reality. So, you know, for us all to have that courage, because when you you know, become aware of some of the things that I mentioned, you know, the logical conclusion is to act. You know, and for me personally, I think I was very much focused over the last 10 years on, you know, the systems changing, like you were talking about, working towards that. But then I sort of came to a point where I realized I have to get my own ducks in a row before I can spread myself too thin out there trying to help the whole world. And I think that's pretty much the general, you know, truth, you know, foundational truth for people, is that, you know, we have to really make sure that we have that security, that stability, that resiliency in our own lives, and then extend that out, starting with your neighbors and your family and your friends, and then beyond that, you know, whatever we can do. But, you know, to build that security for yourself is going to help you to be able to help other people too. And just, you know, going again to add on to that list of essential things that we all need right now is to definitely talk about our neighbors, you know, and forming relationships with the people around us. You know, that's just as essential, I would say, as water and food, you know, is having people around you that you can count on, you know. So, you know, if there's people that you've been forgetting to talk to, you know, a lot of us, we don't really engage with our neighbors. Now's a good time to start doing it, you know, and become versed in understanding what's really happening in our body politic and in the, you know, economy and all that, so that you can share that information in a good, empowering way with other people too. You know, hey, have you noticed this? Have you noticed the price of food's going up? You know, are you preparing for it at all? Me personally, yeah, this is what I'm doing, you know, and just sharing like that, because you know, you also want the people around you to be strong too and prepared
Mm-hmm.
for whatever's coming too. We're all going to be stronger that way. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I think of you, Lev, and the Alliance for a Viable Future, and that image you always shared about the forest, the community of trees, and how they support each other so they can stand strong and tall like that, you know. And that's how we got to be, to look out for each other that way too, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? But just make sure you got yourself dialed in, and then
Mm-hmm.
start to reach out to other people to help them out, you know, as well. You can only lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink, right? So like that, you know, you can't invest too much energy in trying to save everybody, but you know, you can plant seeds where you go and build relationships. You know, that's the
Mm-hmm.
important thing. Build a good trusting relationship with people. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I mean, you know, one of the things I plan on doing this year is growing a lot of food and bringing some to my neighbors as a gift. You know, even if I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have a garden here, you could bake some bread and bring it over to your neighbors. It's a wonderful way of forming a connection with somebody else, you know. So anyways, those are just a couple last words of encouragement for everybody out there. Feel free to message me, wildbeautyfarm@gmail.com. I'm on Facebook, Jon Lee Rucker. And I love talking to people about this sort of stuff. I actually formed a little discussion group with some of our PermaJam community recently, and the topic was food resilience, and it was a talking circle, and it was a place for us to talk about these sorts of issues, and for people to share their knowledge of, oh well, you know, what do they know about preparedness that they can share with all of us. And we combined our knowledge and started to you know, encourage each other into taking steps in our lives, you know.
Yeah.
So important discussions to be having. Just want to encourage everybody to do that, and feel free to reach out to me if you want to converse with me about it.
Thank you so much, John.
Mhm.
I know, well, this is the first of many conversations here
Oh,
on this podcast, and in
mhm.
lots of different ways. So
Yeah, looking forward to all of them. Thank you, brother, for having me on here.
mm-hmm.